It's time for the third installment of the family project, Principal Invincible. Oh, how sweet it is. So we're going to derive some principal understanding of watching this circus in Washington, D.C. So what did the kids pull up for this week? Well, let's find out. Bullet point number 1. Pelosi in 1998 said, quote, "The Republicans in the House are paralyzed with hatred of President Clinton, and until the Republicans free themselves of this hatred, our country will suffer." Now, she believed that the country would suffer unless Republicans found a way to treat Bill Clinton with leniency. Now, let's talk about what Bill Clinton did. Bill Clinton used his position and authority as an older and more powerful man from a higher caste in society to get some nani and some brains. Now, for people who don't understand what that means out on the street, it means coitus and fellatio. Okay? All right. So he got some coitus and fellatio from an intern named Monica Lewinsky. All right? So everybody ought to know that story, but presidents shouldn't conduct themselves in that manner. And the thing is, Bill Clinton, when questioned about it, this less than presidential behavior, he lied about it, and he was being impeached for lying under oath. Now, let's talk about cheating on one's spouse. When a person cheats on their spouse, it is necessarily diminishing that spouse, because the most valuable thing in the universe is a human being. God didn't create something more valuable than human beings. Sorry, Peter, you're effing wrong, and if you don't agree with that, squeak squeak some more. Okay? So when you have a spouse, the idea is that you have something of greatest value, and this person is fully committed to you, and you really don't deserve it. And but to go and treat yourself to another spouse or a pseudo spouse on the side is to say that somehow you deserve two whole humans unto yourself, and to be supremely intimate with both of them. But each one of those two people only deserves half of a human, and it diminishes their value that they only deserve half of the cheater. Okay? And so he's doubled his value in his own mind, and he's halved the value of both Hillary and Monica. So when our leaders conduct themselves in this way, it sends a bad message to both boys and girls in society about the value of the opposite sex. And since these relationships between men and women are the most powerful determinant of peace in society, of whether or not we live among a flood of juvenile delinquents, that relationship cannot stand to be warped in how the majority of young people perceive it. So Bill Clinton committed a moral crime against the country by not saying sorry sooner for his weakness. The country, being a Christian country, especially after Jerry Falwell, is no stranger to forgiving people, but to carry out this idea that it wasn't a big deal was terrible. But let me move on, okay? So Clinton was impeached for lying under oath about whether or not he had sex with that woman. All right. He actually committed a crime. He perjured himself. But Pelosi prodded the Republicans for not being forgiving enough or taking Bill Clinton's actions seriously, and she equated that push for moral clarity as hatred. So get this. It was hatred when the Republicans were pushing for a morally clear nation. Okay? So they did impeach Bill Clinton, but she doesn't seem to care so much when President Trump is being impeached, threatening to tear the nation apart. And what President Trump did was not an actual crime, like perjury is, but he committed crimes, or so they say, in the perception of Democrats. So Democrats perceived a phone call to be evidence of the intention of carrying out a quid pro quo. He did not carry out the quid pro quo. He did not get a favor from the Ukrainian president. The Ukrainian president did not carry out anything that President Trump suggested. And so there was no trade-off. And so there was no crime. And there's actually no evidence that he was seeking to commit the crime, seeking the quid pro quo. But since it's so obvious that he did not commit a crime, it's tearing the country apart that they wanted to impeach him or pretend that they, in their minds, thought that it was a crime. Okay? All right. So where's the hypocrisy? The hypocrisy is in the fact that she implored Republicans not to rip the country into pieces. Yet, when it's her chance or her turn, she doesn't seem to care about ripping the country into pieces. Second point, Maxine Waters, quote, this is 1998, quote, they hate Bill and Hillary Clinton so much, Republicans, that they will stop at nothing to bring him down. And then, in 2017, of President Trump, she said, my greatest desire is to lead him, Trump, right into impeachment. Okay, so when it is your greatest desire to bring somebody down, that is the very definition of hate. Love is an action where you lay down your time, maybe even your life, in the interest of helping somebody else attain something of need or something that they desire. Okay, that is the very definition of love, that you would break off pieces of your blood, sweat, and tears, your time on this earth, in the interest of pursuing somebody else's desires, wants, needs, and desires. That is love. But hate is the opposite. It is when I break off my time in order to separate you from those things that you want, need, or desire. Love, the purpose is that when you reach your goal, you will experience joy, and I'm happy to participate in that. But hatred is when you are taunted and frustrated and separated from your goals. I rejoice that you are in pain. Okay? So, Maxine Waters was criticizing Republicans for their supposed hate of Bill and Hillary Clinton. Yet, she openly says that she hates Trump because her greatest desire is to see him separated from his work. Anyway, bullet point number 3. Nancy Pelosi has stated during the Bill Clinton impeachment trial that president cannot be impeached unless it's bipartisan. But during the Donald Trump impeachment trial, not one Republican voted for impeachment. Okay, so Nancy Pelosi was talking about how, you can't have a real impeachment if only one side votes for it. Why? Because it has the obvious appearance that it's being used as a tool to just block a political opponent. If the opposing party impeaches a president and nobody in the president's party agrees with it, then how could it be universally viewed as wrong, whatever it is that he did, right? How could it be viewed as universally wrong if it's only wrong in the eyes of a particular party, right? So that particular party didn't even vote for that person, and so they don't like him to begin with. So maybe it's just the case that that party needs to learn something from what the American people voted for, because they don't seem to understand among themselves what the point was. So, when the people voted for something and you disagree with it, and everybody in your party of like mind disagree with it, fine, you could have a phenomenon like that. But to judge the entire half of the country as having done the wrong thing, and then go about correcting half of an entire nation because you know best. Well, that's what's going on with this impeachment here. They do not understand Trump. They do not understand the relationship between Trumpism and the electorate. So, in their ignorance, they view it as wrong-headed. Okay, and we're going to move on. They also came up with witnesses and refused to use Hunter Biden as a witness. Okay, so the very phone call that the president made to the Ukraine president was about looking into a company that Hunter Biden was on the board of, Burisma. It's a gas company in Ukraine. So if there was actually corrupt doings, and if that company was being protected from the prying eyes of a prosecutor, and Joe Biden confessed to tampering with the prosecutor's investigation of the company that his son worked at, then that's a situation that should be rectified prior to giving millions or billions of dollars to a nation that is known to be corrupt. Now, a nation that is acting to clean up known matters of corruption is a nation we start thinking maybe we can trust them with giving them this aid money. So President Trump was well within his rights to question a known case of corruption as to whether or not it's being handled by the country that is expecting us to give them billions of dollars in aid money. To say that it's absolutely nothing more than him conducting a smear campaign against his political opponent is just pure reaching or wishful thinking on the part of the Democrats. To say that he was making those comments about Burisma and looking into Burisma, to say that he's doing that just to bring Joe Biden low, yeah, sure, yeah, you'd like that. Why? Because you wouldn't like the fact that the children of public officials who've gotten sweet deal jobs, you wouldn't like that to become something that the FBI starts looking into, Department of Justice starts looking into, because apparently even Nancy Pelosi's son is in one of those situations where he benefited from his mother's position in government. So, they'd rather not legitimize the idea that there's something to look at there. Instead, there's nothing to look at in terms of corruption with Burisma in the Democrats' mind. But that doesn't mean the rational American mind is the average Democrat activist politician's mind, because the rest of us understand that you don't want to give the money where there's known corruption, because all your money is going to be given to mobsters if you give it to that country, because the mobsters are connected. There's a deep state inside the Ukraine. So if you know about a corrupt matter, you better look into it before you give them that money. Otherwise, you're delinquent as a president. Anyway, it's nothing more than that. And since they're dirty, many people in government are dirty with, a pad in the pockets of their relatives. It's not something that they want taken seriously. They don't want to see a precedent set where Joe Biden got punished for it or his son got punished for it. So they'd rather turn the entire matter into an accusation against Trump. And the narrative is, oh, he just did this because he was so scared of Joe Biden. Yeah, right. You see Joe Biden in the debates? Does he look scary? Does he look like, oh man, Trump's got a handful? So that whole narrative falls apart because Joe's not formidable anyway. Okay, so the other point is that they didn't give Republicans witnesses in the hearings during the House investigation. So they didn't allow the Republicans to call anybody. And yet they are trying to call witnesses and force the Senate to call witnesses that they want called. Or so they say. And I'm not too sure about that. Or maybe I'll talk about that later, because I think there's some deep chess going on with this witnesses issue. All right. So one of the legal scholars during the House hearing said, and he was a Democrat, and he didn't like this impeachment, and he said that this is the weakest, fastest impeachment in the history of America, and if you took this standard, the only people who abused their power were the Democrats. In other words, the Democrats pushed through this impeachment to politically hurt Donald Trump. It didn't matter that it wasn't legitimate. It didn't matter that it wasn't bipartisan. It didn't matter that their own stated principles about impeachment and their concepts of fairness about impeachment were violated in the process of handing down this impeachment. What mattered was that President Trump would have what they think will be a stain. Okay? They're doing this just to slap Trump. That's it. I do think that their position is weak. This is obvious. But Nancy Pelosi is going around saying that he's impeached forever. So this is about hurting his name. This is about tarnishing his legacy. This is not about conducting the business of the people. This is about spite. This is about spite. It was absolute waste of the time of public officials to do this. Taxpayer dollars and the business of the people were suspended. Taxpayer dollars was wasted just so that they could attach to his name forever an impeachment that, by their own reckoning of fairness, is illegitimate. Their own reckoning of fairness during the Bill Clinton impeachment says that this impeachment is illegitimate. Okay. All right. So Nadler, back in the Clinton years, said that there must never be a narrowly voted impeachment or an impeachment substantially supported by one of our major political parties and largely opposed by the other. Such an impeachment would lack legitimacy, would produce divisiveness and bitterness in our politics for years to come, and will call into question the very legitimacy of our political institutions. Wow, that sounded very wise. It sounded very logical. Okay, if you do something just to hurt somebody, if you gang up on somebody, and you don't even care about whether or not the gang was right, well, whether or not the mob was justified, and you just gang up on somebody because you can, because there's nobody there to stop you at the moment, that doesn't make it right. And this is what he was saying. He was just saying that you can't have a political party gang up on a president, and the other political party is like saying, there's nothing wrong here. You cannot gang up. You can't strike this man. You cannot strike this person. You cannot strike the president over this matter. And there's no agreement. You know, back when I was a kid, you know, if you did something dirty enough or wrong enough on the block, you know, all the adults would go to your mom and say, did you know that your son was seen doing this and seen doing that? And this is the idea of like a universally accepted standard of behavior inside, you know, a community. Well, this community is our government. This community is our nation. So if it's one party against a president, that's a sign that there's no universal right and wrong being heeded here. Okay? So Nadler went ahead with the exact same thing that he said would be divisive. So I wish somebody would put in his face a camera asking him, so were you guys being divisive when you impeached President Trump? No, they're not going to hold his feet to the fire. Okay? They're not going to out him for having a double standard. And if they did, somebody's going to give him a pass when he throws up some BS commentary, and they're going to pretend like, oh, that makes it all make sense. Because that's what the media does. All right, next point, point 7. Why would you not afford the President of the United States to review the charges against him? This has to do with withholding the charges and not allowing the President to make a statement that goes on record as they hand down articles of impeachment. Okay, so apparently Pelosi thought that kind of behavior during the time of Clinton was bad, yet she committed the same action. Not allowing the president to have a voice, not allowing the president to have representation during the House hearings, and then putting this up to ignorant fools in the electorate as if this was legit. Now, ignorant fools don't understand any of the processes of government. They are system illiterate, okay? And Democrats are the proud manipulators of system illiterates, okay? And that is why they conduct these things, because of photo ops and headlines. Headlines are often very deceptive because people don't have the time or the vocabulary to read entire articles or get into it like that, or to even understand the history of politics and why certain political systems, you know, are already historically run through with the blade of truth. And the truth has set us free from those political systems that do not work. Yet, the system illiterates do not know that they don't work, and are manipulated into resurrecting those failed political systems. And the Democrat Party is funded by globalist George Soros. I sometimes wonder, does George Soros want us to adopt communism and socialism because he loves communism and socialism, or because he knows communism and socialism F up countries, and so he's just being anti-American? I think he's just being anti-American, so he's trying to actually saddle us with dysfunctional systems through socialist advocates. Really wicked. Like, I know this doesn't work, so I want your country to adopt it so that you guys go down. Anyway. So Maxine Waters, she said, the President of the United States deserves a right, prior to the release, a copy of the report written by the independent counsel. So when did this happen? When did this happen with Trump? It didn't. Okay. They're both opposed to both Pelosi and Maxine Waters are opposed to the idea of allowing the president a voice in the impeachment process. They were for this idea, but now they are opposed to it. And when people are on two sides of a principle, just because, and the only thing that's different when they give their divergent opinions is, you know, whose side was on the offense and whose side was on the defense. It just basically means that their own principles come second and their party affiliations come first. So they are politically expedient in what they say, and they don't mean what they say. They don't state what they say as principles. So the whole boo-hoo, yeah, I'm so sorry we had to do this, was a show. They didn't feel that, they were dragging the country through this impeachment, and it was solemn and very regretful thing to have to do. No, that's just them pretending to be people of principle, because the last thing that they are people of principle, and they know that they're naked. They are absolutely naked. Everybody can see that they don't wear a principle on their souls. Okay, and so in that nakedness, they have to act or mimic principled people. They're pathetic. They are pathetic. Anyway, that's it for the kids' bullet points, and my comments. Why do Republicans respect this wildly skewed double standard? Okay, all right. Why do Republicans watch these people be grossly unfair and then reciprocate fairness, and then never punish or call out the Democrats for attempting to carry out some double standard? Why do they do that? Is it because they're weak? Is it because they're scared? I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about this later. Maybe I do know. Maybe time's running out. Anyway, something for you to think about. Why do they abide this wildly skewed double standard, advanced by the Democrats and parroted by the media? Do they have a choice? All right. Talk to you later.